Most people plant what they like to eat. That's fine. But the gardeners who are actually cutting their grocery bills, the ones who've been doing this for years, they plant differently. They're making very specific choices about what goes in the ground, not random choices, not what looked good in a catalog. Production, nutrition, real dollar value, that's what's driving it. This video is going to show you exactly what those crops are and the reasoning behind each one. Let's start with something most people skip and shouldn't: sweet potatoes. Most people pass on these, and the reason is usually wrong. They assume they need a big plot or a long season, but one single slip, that's what the starter plants are called, can produce 4 to 8 pounds of food. And sweet potatoes store for months without refrigeration, which is something most vegetables simply can't do. That's food security sitting on a shelf in your house. When supply chains get shaky, this crop keeps feeding families long after everything else is gone. Garlic. If you only plant one thing this fall, make it this. The math is hard to argue with. A single head at the grocery store costs anywhere from 75 cents to over $2. A pound of seed garlic planted in fall can produce 10 to 15 pounds the following summer. You plant it in fall, it sits through winter, and it comes up strong in spring almost on its own. One of the most expensive things at the store. One of the easiest things to grow at home. Dried beans. Nobody talks about these, which is exactly why they're worth paying attention to. Most people grow green beans because they want something fast. But dried beans, the kind you let fully mature on the vine, are where the real value is. They store for years. They're a complete protein source. A small 10 by 10 bed can produce enough to stock your pantry for months. You're not just growing a vegetable, you're building a food supply that doesn't expire. Preparedness isn't a mindset, it's a pantry. Kale. Yeah, I know. Everyone's sick of hearing about kale. Plant it anyway. Forget the health trends. The real reason to grow kale has nothing to do with nutrition. It's because kale grows when almost everything else dies. It handles frost. It keeps producing through temperatures that would wipe out most of your garden. Most people find out by accident. They leave it in the ground expecting it to die, and in January they're still cutting fresh leaves. That gap, when the rest of the garden goes quiet, is exactly when most people become completely dependent on the store. Kale fills it. Notice what all four of these have in common. They're not just productive, they're productive at the moments when food security matters most. Storage season, winter, budget crunches. That's not a coincidence, that's intentional planting. Zucchini. The problem with zucchini isn't the plant, it's that nobody plans for what happens when it starts producing. One plant can put out 30 to 50 pounds of food in a single season. The people who get the most out of it aren't the ones eating it fresh every night. They're freezing it, dehydrating it, turning it into flour. That's 50 pounds of preserved food from a single plant. Most people let half of it rot on the vine because they never thought past the harvest. Paste tomatoes, specifically varieties like San Marzano or Amish paste. Fresh tomatoes are great, but they disappear fast. Paste varieties are built for preservation, thicker walls, less water. They cook down into sauce in a fraction of the time. One plant can give you enough to fill dozens of jars. A shelf of homemade tomato sauce keeps your kitchen running through winter without a single trip to the store. If you only have space for a few tomato plants, this is where to put them. Last one, and the most overlooked. Perennial herbs, chives, oregano, thyme. A small bundle of fresh thyme at the grocery store costs $2 or $3 and lasts maybe a week. A thyme plant in your garden produces for 10-15 years with almost zero effort. Plant it once, it just keeps going. And beyond the savings, fresh herbs are what make simple, home-cooked meals feel like real food, which matters a lot when you're eating more from your garden and less from the store. The best return on investment in any backyard food system, and most people don't even think to include them. One more thing. If you're working with a small space, a patio, containers, a modest urban lot, most of these crops still work. Garlic, kale, herbs, and dwarf bean varieties do just fine in raised beds or large pots. You don't need a large property. You need to be intentional about what goes in the ground. Knowing what to plant is one thing, Organizing it into a system that actually works together is something else. That's where a lot of people get stuck. There's a guide called the Backyard Miracle Farm System that walks through how to turn a simple backyard into a productive food system step by step, what to plant, how to organize it, and how to make it produce consistently over time. Link is in the pinned comment if you want to check it out. Every single crop on this list was chosen for the same reason, not because it's popular, not because it's trendy, because it does something specific that moves you further away from depending on a system you don't control and closer to a backyard that actually feeds your family. That shift doesn't happen all at once. It happens one season at a time, one good decision at a time. The people who start now are the ones who look back in 2 or 3 years and realize their grocery bill got smaller, their pantry got fuller, and their backyard became something they actually rely on. That's a useful garden. That's the goal. Which of these crops are you already growing, and which one are you adding this season? Drop it in the comments. I want to know. If this gave you even one idea you can use this season, hit the like button. Subscribe if you're working on building a more self-sufficient backyard. There's more coming. Honestly, I'd start with the garlic today. It's the easiest win you'll get this year.